Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast, your go-to source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development. We hope you tune in often for all things people management, organizational development and change, organizational leadership, and social impact related. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with Human Capital Innovations Podcast. Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. In this HCI podcast episode, I talk with Filip Dousek about people analytics and AI solutions for organizations. Filip Dousek, welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast.
Thank you, Jonathan. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have a nice conversation with you today. We're going to be exploring people analytics and AI solutions for organizations. And we'll talk about that generally, but we'll also talk about it within the context of the recent acquisition of Workday acquiring Stories, the organization where you're a co-founder and CEO. And I'll share more about that in your bio here in just a moment. So exploring people analytics and AI solutions, I think, will be super interesting and fascinating for everyone. And I think particularly in this technology-driven kind of remote workplace kind of environment, and organizations are trying to do more and more with HRIS and with people analytics. I think we all need to increase our competency level when it comes to these issues. As we get started, I wanted to share Filip's bio with everybody. Filip Dousek was a co-founder and CEO of Stories BI, an augmented analytics startup acquired by Workday Inc. Since then, Filip has been leading the team delivering Workday People Analytics. Before Stories, he focused on enterprise analytics and AI solutions. He has also published Flock Without Birds, a novel about Western civilizations and its paradigm shifts. Super interesting. I've always, I do a lot of writing, but it's all very professional and academic. I've always had this kind of inkling that, someday maybe I'll write a novel, but I'm not sure that'll ever happen. So anyways, kudos to you for doing that.
Let's hope you do.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun. Well, Filip, anything else you would like to add in terms of your background for listeners before we dive on in?
Oh, that's a great summary. Thank you.
Okay, well, cool. So I guess the first thing to start off, tell us a little bit more about Stories, the origins and the innovation of Stories, and then we can get into the acquisition by Workday and a little bit more context around that. And then we can get into more about just people analytics more generally, the AI solutions and such.
Stories really is an engine that automatically analyzes data. That's what we have built. And from some other angle, it's in a way a automated storyteller. So you can think of it as, let's take in all of the data. And in the case of Workday now, let's take in all the data about our organization, about our workers and employees. And then let's crunch that and let's output just the top 10 or top 20 most interesting stories that we should be looking at. So that's really the core of the engine. And that's what we've built in for the last 6 years or so.
I appreciate that background. And that's super interesting. So you build up your co-founder, your CEO of Stories, and then you get acquired by Workday. Tell us a little bit more about that experience, that process, because that's, I think, something that's unique that a lot of people haven't experienced who are listening, and then we can go from there.
We built Stories, I would say, at the right time. We have been one of the first augmented analytics startups that really got this kind of technology to work. Augmented analytics as such is a term that Gartner coined in about 2016, 17. And in a way, it denotes a progression from, from just analytics or from just like the crude concept of AI. Like, we'll just throw something at a machine and it will tell us everything that's happening in the data. Like that's in a way a fairly naive concept, right? And augmented analytics really addresses that the complexity. So what we mean by augmented analytics is we need typically a human in the loop, but we can augment the human analysts or the manager's work through an AI or machine learning or other intelligent algorithm. And that's where augmented analytics really comes into play. So, and this is where, having built one of the first examples of such technology, like we were showcased by Gartner quite a bit. Gartner having really defined this area, they started pointing to us also as a prime example of a startup that's really pioneering the work here. And that's how several large companies, including Workday, heard about us, and we entered into conversations about the Pondage acquisition. And there was at about the same time when we also got into the Alchemist Accelerator, which is a sort of top B2B Silicon Valley based accelerator. And so on one hand, I was moving to the Bay Area already because of the accelerator, and these discussions with Workday opened up at about the same time. So in the end, we basically chose the option to join Workday and focus on the building of the product while leveraging Workday's magnificent sales force and the whole synergy that comes from the large enterprise.
Yeah, thank you. And so, and I appreciate providing a little bit more context around AI and machine learning as well, as you were building everything and what it can potentially do. So so Stories gets acquired by Workday. You ride off into the sunset. Everyone's happy, doing really great things for organizations. That's all amazing. That's wonderful. And so you continue to lead the Workday people analytics team. So let's zoom out now and talk a little bit more specifically, just a little bit more generally about people analytics and the types of AI machine learning that can augment that and help us better utilize the vast amount of data that many organizations have around their people, their efficiencies, their performance. What are some of the types of things that you focus on with your team in terms of the people analytics for organizations? And what are some of the core elements that leaders need to be thinking about if they haven't already?
Let me start by saying that the original Stories technology, after the acquisition, basically became Workday People Analytics, which is a product. And so I can quite specifically talk about what the product can do. It analyzes the key areas of HCM. So it's diversity and inclusion. It's hiring and attrition. It's organizational composition. It's talent and performance. It's also now skills, and there are further areas that we're adding to the engine itself. So, and when you think about these areas that I have just named, those really are the dimensions of the workforce that managers today, especially in larger and medium and larger enterprises, really need to be looking at.
Yeah, I think so. All those elements are so important, and I appreciate that you are focusing on skill areas. You are focusing on DE&I elements. because I think kind of the traditional people analytics space has often been more on performance metrics and efficiency metrics and some of those sorts of things. And so it's really great to see how it's expanding to include some of these other really vital, important elements. And like you mentioned, ultimately the goal of all of this, right, is to help us better understand the human capital piece within the organization and equip leaders with the data that will assist them in making decisions in terms of hiring and promotion decisions and how to best support their people and where the gaps are in skill sets and competencies, and to work towards developing those for their people. All of that is just so incredibly important in the modern workplace because we can't be stagnant. We can't rely on what we've done well before. We have to constantly be pushing into an unforeseen future, and all of these data tools can help us make more informed evidence-based decisions, right? And I think that's all wonderful, and we just need to be doing it much more. What would you say?
Absolutely.
Yeah. What would you say to? Oh, go ahead.
I would maybe just jump in and say, where really is the innovation that we are bringing to the table? Because what you're describing, some listeners might think, okay, well, we're doing that with our BI tools and with our reports, and we're looking at that. But what we have always seen with this more traditional data analytics and reporting is that people look at the reports and there are numbers there, but they don't really answer the question of what is important. Like, what is the one thing that I should be acting on today? And that is really what our engine provides, because it looks at millions of data points and it outputs just the top stories that matter the most, and it ranks them. So when it says, okay, well, you are losing people in this location, and it's mobile Android engineers with this and this tenure, and they have these common characteristics. When you get that story and the engine tells you, and this is the number one story across the whole organization. Like, we looked at those 20,000 people that work in your organization, and this is the number one. Like, that's extremely powerful, right? When it's a ranked story. Or when that a similar story is the fifth most important one in the organization, but it's the most important one within my own area of responsibility. And so that insight, together with the prioritization, is really where where the power lies.
I'm excited to announce the publication of my new book from HCI Press, Bluer Than Indigo Leadership: The Journey of Becoming a Truly Remarkable Leader. Early in my adult life, I learned about an Asian proverb that translates as bluer than indigo. If you think about the color indigo, it is a brilliant, deep, and vibrant blue, what some would call the bluest of blues. To have something that is bluer than indigo is rare and truly remarkable. Contrary to popular myth, there is no one-size-fits-all or cookie-cutter approach to effective leadership. There's no silver bullet, no secret sauce, no go-to model that will solve all of our problems. The truth is, great leaders have all had their unique strengths and flaws, and have all had to discover and then pave their own distinctive path in their life's journey to fulfill their leadership potential. Bluer Than Indigo Leadership will help you discover your own path and explore those ordinary, everyday actions that will help you respond to an uncertain future and produce extraordinary results for individuals, teams, and organizations.
Yeah, I think that's all excellent. And I appreciate just a better understanding of the unique features of what Workday People Analytics can offer. What would you say to organizational leaders perhaps listening to the podcast today, and they do think, yeah, we're already doing some of this with our own reporting, or even perhaps they know, maybe they're a small to medium-sized business, they know that they should be doing this, but they haven't really started even. What would you say would be the first steps that they should take in trying to better understand, their people management and analytics strategy for their team, for their organization?
Right. Well, so I will give the answer that's possibly unpopular, but it's the place to start is really the end goal. So we see a stark difference. Workday is going through hundreds of customer implementations every year, and we just see a stark difference between two groups of customers. The one says, you know what, we'll just start easy. We'll put in our transactional system, we'll start collecting data, we'll see how it goes, and then eventually in phase 2, phase 3, we'll get to analytics. And when you talk to these customers 3 years or 5 years down the road, they are still trying to get to analytics, right? And they are still trying to cleanse their data and define what is it really that they are trying to get out of the transactional system. On the other hand, the group of customers who take the plunge and say, okay, well, we really want to transform our business into a data-driven business. And this is how we think, we as an organization can exist as a data-driven business. They define the vision. They really define how they work in that ideal scenario, what insights they are getting, what metrics they are measuring. That's where the companies actually start shaping their transactional system and the whole data layer and their data quality processes so that they reach that endpoint. And so the hard path is often the more successful part. That would be my answer.
Yeah, thank you. And I agree. I just think it's so important that we begin with the end in mind, that we focus on the why behind what we're trying to accomplish with any strategy, really, but certainly with a people analytics approach. And I'm a big believer in creating people-centric organizations. And so sometimes I think people think, on the one hand, like a people-centric organization, that's at odds with a people analytics strategy, because now you're talking about quantitative stuff, and you're talking about people as numbers as opposed to people as people. And I push back on that, because I say, no, when you have the data to make evidence-based decisions that actually target the specific needs of actual people, you can really do so much more with the resources that you have. And ultimately that people-centric organization can thrive as you utilize data more.
I would say you can have a non-analytical people-centric organization as long as you know everyone in the company, right? So if you have a startup of 30 or 50 people, that's good, that's fine. But if you have hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of people in your organization, how can you make a people-centric organization without knowing anything about those people, right? So data there is the best proxy for connection in those large organizations.
Yeah, exactly. And to your point, in small organizations, it's all built upon this idea that you interact with people, you just know them, right? You know what's going on. When you don't have metrics, when you don't have the analytics to support decision-making in a large organization, inevitably what ends up happening is it's still based on stories, but instead of knowing the story of every person, it's all anecdotal and you only know little pockets. And so then you're making decisions for everybody that's based on extremely limited understanding of the circumstances of everybody. And that becomes really problematic. And especially when we're talking about like DE&I, for example. I mean, goodness, if you want to have indefensible types of policies, practices, procedures, and promotional practices and such in an organization, do it based off of anecdotal understanding of your people and their needs. And inevitably what ends up happening is those implicit biases that we all have start to manifest because you're allowing those narratives to drive your decision making as opposed to what the data is actually telling you. So, I mean, for so many reasons, as you've well articulated, we just need to make sure that we're utilizing this data. And if we don't have it yet, or if we have it but we don't really know how to utilize it yet, it's worth taking the time, prioritizing this, because it's going to have a tremendous ROI.
I can give you an example from Workday as such, like how Workday works actually internally with its employees. We've employee culture, employee engagement is a huge topic at Workday. And Anil Bushri, the CEO, used to say that culture beats strategy, right? And that's a really interesting notion, and it's fantastic to see from the inside really how much attention is given to culture at Workday. And the best part of that is it's very data driven. Like Workday's people culture is very data driven. So we have now recently acquired another company that's called Peakon, right? And Peakon basically does employee engagement through surveys and analytics. But even before Peakon, there was a weekly survey that would be sent out to everyone at Workday, and every employee would get 3 questions. So it would take 1 minute to answer. But every manager then had, an anonymously collected perspective of how their team is doing. And this was really informative, even actually in those situations where you would think, okay, I have 10 people working for me, I know what's happening here. But quite often what the people then basically relay anonymously can be quite different from what you actually hear directly. And so with a system like this in place, every manager has a very direct feedback from their teams, whether their team is 10 people or 500 people, and they really know what to focus on when they want to be improving the employee experience. So now with Peakon in place, we have actually just gone live internally about a week ago at Workday with Peakon, and that's a really great upgrade of that process. Like everybody at Workday now is really buzzed about what we get there. And the next step on the journey will be certainly like connecting Peakon with our people analytics insights. And so that's something that we will be working toward and building for our customers, that kind of integration as well.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And it speaks to the need, the importance of more real-time feedback. So the older model of like the annual engagement survey, that then, you collect the data for a couple of weeks, and then, so I take the survey, after a couple of weeks it closes, and then people do their analyses and everything, and then they pass it along to the upper management team, and then over time it trickles its way down to other levels of the organization. And sometimes it's months, maybe half a year later, that you actually start to like have a meeting where you see how this information is being utilized. And by that point, it's almost useless information anyways. And so just having more real-time understanding of where you're at, more pulse surveys. I love the idea of a simple weekly survey just to understand where you're at, where the gaps are. I think that's tremendous. And if anyone listening, you're thinking, oh, we've never even done an annual survey. Okay, well, you need to start somewhere. So start somewhere, get a little bit of comfort and familiarity with it, get some people on your team that can help with that. But that's certainly a really low bar. And we need to get past that quickly. We need to get to the point where we're just having on an ongoing basis, better understanding our people, what's driving them, what their performance issues are, and how we can better support them through mentoring, coaching, career, professional development. Well, Filip, it has been a real pleasure chatting with you today. The time has flown by. I recognize we're getting close to the end of our time. I don't think I said at the beginning, but you are joining us from Prague. So it's getting into the evening there. I'm sure you have plans. So we're going to let you go. But before we close out this episode, I wanted to give you a chance to share with listeners how they can get connected with you, find out more about Workday, find out more about the work that you're doing, and then give us the final word on the topic for today.
Thank you, Jonathan. So I am present on pretty much all of the usual social media channels. I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter. If you look for Filip Dousek, you will find me there. And also, if you want to see a little bit more about my upcoming novel, you can find more at www.flockwithoutbirds.com. And so I would love to hear from the listeners and stay in touch.
It's been a pleasure. I encourage listeners to reach out, to get connected, to find out more about what Filip can do for you. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you can have a great week.
The alchemy of truly remarkable leadership. Ordinary, everyday actions that produce extraordinary results. Consider how the nature of work has shifted over the past 50 years. With increased globalization, rapid technological advancement, and the shift in economic composition, the average job of today looks very different than the average job of 50 years ago. What will the jobs and organizations of tomorrow look like? Moreover, what does this all mean for organizational leaders? What are the core competencies and capabilities of organizations and their leadership that are prepared for continued disruption and geopolitical and socioeconomic shifts? Regardless of what the future holds, increasingly, leaders need to be socially minded, data-driven, decisive, champions of talent, and disruptors of the traditional notions of leadership, teams, organizations, and work. The alchemy of truly remarkable leadership will help you to explore your own leadership competencies and capabilities and consider ways to apply and implement them into your workplace and personal life. Check out Human Capital Innovations magazine, Human Capital Leadership. Human Capital Leadership is a free, interactive e-magazine with the mission to help individuals, leaders, and organizations find innovative approaches to maximize their human capital potential. We publish issues quarterly in August, November, February, and May. Take a look at the latest issue and let us know what you think. Thanks again for joining us for this episode of the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. I hope you stay healthy and safe and that you have a great week.